Hey, this is Rob with Road Dirt, and we are at Phoenix Roasters Coffee in Duluth, Georgia. Hashtag coffee that matters. And this is my good friend, Kevin Morgan. Kevin and I have been riding buddies for quite a few years, and shared a lot of great memories together over the years. And we have a lot in common as far as motorcycles and other things that we enjoy, and barbecuing and all that good stuff. So while we're sipping on some, well, shameless plug, some Phoenix Roasters coffee and some of their cold brew, their nitro cold brew stuff, I thought this would be a good opportunity for us to talk about the events of 9/11, because I think, and you probably experienced this as well, it seems like the further we get away from that date and that event in American history, and other things like all the craziness of this year, we tend to forget about how monumental an event that was in the life of America. You don't see it talked about a whole lot. You don't see it referenced a lot. A lot of times it's not studied in some places. It's not studied in school anymore, and it seems to be lost on the younger generations. A lot of them that were born after that don't really even know a whole lot about it, if anything. And Kevin's got a unique story, and I thought as we look at 9/11 and we remember that date together, Kevin was there, and Kevin's got a story to tell, of something of being there and experiencing it and how it changed his life forever. It's maybe some life lessons we all can take from that. But I remember we've talked about it before, and you've told me some of the stories of being there. I've seen pictures of the bike you had at the time parked on the side of the Hudson River, and the two towers in the background. And let's talk about your motorcycles. I mean, well, what are you right now? I want to catch everybody. What are you riding right now? What are your weapons of choice out on the open road?
So right now, Rob, I'm riding a Kawasaki Concourse. 2008, one of the first, the newer version of the Concourse. Done some iron butts on that and some other things. And my kind of local vehicle is a 2010 Ural.
A Ural with a sidecar.
With a sidecar, painted with camouflage.
I know, man. It looks like Desert Fox camo, man. World War II. It's so cool looking.
So I think it rides like it's from World War II.
It rides like a beast, also, like it's been in the desert. But now, back then, what were you riding when you were in Newark and in New York City? So
I actually got my motorcycle license through a rider's course in New Jersey. And I was so excited after I got my license. And a good friend of mine, he said, "Hey, my friend, he wants to sell his bike." I'm like, "Oh, great!" So it was actually a 1993 Suzuki Intruder. I actually bought it from a Newark police officer. He never rode it. So the bike was 9 years old. It only had 2,000 miles on it when I purchased it.
Was it one of the midnight blue ones, or?
It was a midnight blue.
That's the same one I had, man. I had a 1993. Yeah. That was that midnight metallic fleck blue. We had the same. We even had the same bike, man. That's crazy. But man, it was a great bike.
I love that bike.
Yeah, I did. I love mine too.
Really.
First street bike I ever owned that was my own. That wasn't my dad's. But now you actually worked in New York City for a time. Tell me a little bit about just what brought you to the events of 9/11. Where you were, what you were doing.
Yeah. So actually, I was working in downtown New York City for American Express. And American Express is right across the street from the World, literally right across the street from the World Trade Center Plaza. And I tell people all the time, I spent a lot of time in the plaza. I love coffee, so I was always over there getting coffee.
And a coffee shop there.
They had a great kind of bookshops. I mean, they actually had like a mall in that area. So I spent a lot of time there. Even believe it or not, when I wanted to take breaks from work, I would leave work and maybe once a month or every other month, go up in the World Trade Center, go all the way up, get a ticket, go all the way up to the top. So I was bored, but so I spent a lot of time over in that area.
Yeah,
lots of times. and they had great jazz concerts in the summer.
It was an active. I remember, people talking about how that whole square, the World Trade Center square, there was always a lot of activity going on. A lot of
activity going on.
Outdoor concerts and fairs and festivals and
all
things
the time.
like that.
Lots of fun.
Now, the morning of 9/11 is kind of a miraculous thing with regard to where you normally were and where you found yourself that morning. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so what's interesting, American Express was going through that corporate restructuring.
Yeah.
And I was in IT, and there was a lot of talk of our IT department being outsourced, which meant I was going to lose my job. So I started to look internal postings at American Express to see where maybe there's an opportunity to stay with an American Express. And it just so happened, IT-related job came up, and the hiring manager, he said, hey, let's interview on 9/11. So actually, American Express had office buildings on the New Jersey side on the Hudson. And so on that day, that morning, my interview for this new IT position was going to be on the New Jersey side. But I told the hiring manager, I'm like, I can only do this interview for maybe 30 minutes because I had to get back over for a major project that's kicking off. So I was a project manager, so I got to be there. I can't be late. He's like, okay. So the hiring manager was actually late to the interview.
And then he was late. How late was he?
He was about 20, 30 minutes late. So I remember...
About all the time you had to be able to give him. He
was late.
So, it turned out to be fortuitous, though, didn't it?
Yes, it was a blessing in disguise. So I took there's a subway between New York and New Jersey in lots of ways. It's the PATH train.
Uh-huh.
And so it's about, 5-7 minute ride from where I was at American Express to the office buildings of New Jersey. And I remember coming out the PATH station in New Jersey, it's right there in the Hudson, and looking up like, what a beautiful day. I mean, it was just beautiful. I mean, big white puffy clouds, beautiful blue skies. I mean, it was just a beautiful day. And the first thing I thought, I'm like, I am going to ace this interview. I mean, I got all the jitters out. I wasn't nervous, and I'm like, I'm going to ace this interview. So I go into the New Jersey office building, and the receptionist is like, oh, the hiring manager, he just called. He's going to be 20, 30 minutes late. I'm like, he's killing me.
Right. So
he finally shows up.
Yeah.
And apologized and everything. He's like, well, let's get straight to the interview. So we're kind of in a inside conference room, if you could imagine. And no sooner than, I think, about 5 or 6 minutes into the interview, we see employees running by the door. We're like, conference room, like, what's going on? So we look out and said, a plane crashed in the World Trade Center. It was the first one. We're like, what? And so...
so you guys walked out there to go see it, too.
You
looked across the Hudson and saw smoke coming out of one of the towers.
So, I mean, where I was at vividly, it was just walking to the glass window of the office building and looking up, and we're all like, okay, how are they going to... I mean, no one at the time thought it was a terrorist act.
Right.
And so we just thought maybe it was just a bad accident. So we're looking at it. Are they going to get a big crane to take the plane out? And, all these things were going through our heads. And so I would say a couple minutes later, the hiring manager's like, look, we can't do anything. Let's just finish the interview. I'm like, okay, fine. So no sooner than we got back in the conference room, that's when the second plane hit. And we walked out, it's like, wow. And immediately, within a couple minutes, they wanted us to evacuate our building.
It's then you realize, from your military background, it's like, we're under attack.
Yeah. And so with that, speaking of military, the first thing I thought about, my grandparents are retired. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, let me call my grandparents. They're always watching the news, and they're going to probably think I'm somewhere over in New York. So call my grandmother, hey, Grandma, I'm just calling you. Believe it or not, I'm in New Jersey. I'm okay. Love you. Talk to you later. No sooner than I hung up, all the communication lines went down. Because the World Trade Center had a lot of the satellites and the antennas all over the place.
Pretty much took out the whole city, didn't it?
Took out the whole city. And so another ironic thing that day was a good friend of mine drove to work that day. Mm-hmm. I still don't know why he drove to work that day. No one drives in New York City. You take the subway, you take the ferry, you take a bus, trolley.
You don't try to get a car in.
No one drives into work.
Yeah.
And the reason why I bring that up is like all traffic, public transportation, everything came to the standstill. Everything kaput. Yeah. And so here's my friend. Oh, I drove into work that day. And so his car was parked actually at the Statue of Liberty park. So it was about, I would say, good 15, 20-minute walk from where we were. And so he's like, well, let's just go to the parking lot. We can't do anything right now. And so, again, one of those scenes I remember vividly, me and him, we're walking away from the World Trade Center.
Toward the park.
This is before they came down. Uh-huh. And I just remember an influx of people just running to the, as you can imagine, myself and my friend, we're going away from the Hudson. Yeah. So we're going to his parked car. Everybody else wants to see what's going on.
And they're running to
to see everything.
Wow.
So I had all kinds of emotions in my head, like what happened? Why did this happen? What's going on? And if you can imagine the World Trade Center, that's the first thing you see every single, I mean, you can see the World Trade Center for miles. And I remember him telling me, Kevin, turn around. So I turned around and it was only one standing. I mean, it's like for all my time, I was in, you used to see 2 towers. And he said, turn around. And I think that's when the first one went down. Yeah. And so I never really saw them come down until later on in the news because I was so mad. And so we're still going to the parking lot, walking. And he's like, Kevin, turn around. And they were gone.
The second one buzzed down by then. Just nothing but the cloud. The dust cloud.
They were gone. And so you can imagine it was all kind of emotions and everything going through my head. It was, so it's about 8 of us. We piled into his car, which probably was only a 6-seater, but it was 8 of us piled in his car. Yeah. And I was the closest to, in terms of maybe splitting off and finishing the carpool. And so we finally got home and took my friends, dropped them off. And at the time, that's when I started to see what really happened. And you talk about all kinds of emotions. Being on IT, believe it or not, I was back there with my other colleagues back there within 3 days. Because being in IT, you got to set up all your technology and get the business back working. And I remember just the smell of death in the air. It was just something I will never forget. And that smell lasted for a very long time. It's ironic also.
Lasted like you told me before it lasted, you could smell it in the air for almost months.
You could smell death in the air for months. Wow. And what was kind of ironic, kind of related to 2020 is it was some days we actually worked remote. We worked from home. So it's just ironic that now that I'm thinking about
almost 20 years ago, you guys were already had a network that was working from home.
Yeah. So it was very ironic.
So it's really not all that unusual for you working from home again when you have to, because we did that 20 years ago.
Yeah, definitely.
When you think back, I remember where I was in the office I was working in, and the first plane came down, and an email went out. We all went to one central location and another office where there was a big screen, and we're all watching like, what the heck is going on? And then seeing the second one impacted live was just stunning and shocking. I hear the same thing from people that say, when the attack on Pearl Harbor took place, our parents before us, they remember where they were when that news came over the radio or something like that. And our generation remembers this, and things like that. When you look back, it's been like 19 years since then. How would you say that? What's been the lasting impact on your life from that? How would you say that event, 9/11, shaped and changed you? That maybe it really changed you forever in your life.
I really got the chance to see humanity, and when I say humanity, that people really care for one another. It was a lot of grace and compassion. So American Express, me being an employee, we lost. If I remember correctly, there were 7 employees that died as a result of the World Trade Center attack.
That were in the plaza?
They were in the plaza. They're actually, when the North Tower fell, it fell on a couple of our other buildings where we had travel centers. Yeah. And so it kind of took out and killed about 7 employees from American Express. So employees were already depressed, sad. The third day that we actually came back, I remember the CEO talked to a small group of us, and Ken Chenault, he was in tears. And just seeing like, wow, these people really have some humanity and love, grace and compassion for one another. If you can imagine, if you've ever been in New York, it's a chaotic city. It's a really cool city, but it's loud, noisy, people blowing horns and everything. And after 9/11, you did not hear a horn blow for a couple months, weeks, months. It was kind of odd, even
just kind of weird and quiet.
Really weird and quiet. Saw a lot of unity, American flags all over the place. It was just that grace and compassion and humanity for one another, and that love that I saw that came out of it.
I think that's really a great takeaway from it as well, because when you stop and think about the age we're living in right now, specifically this year, and a lot of the, the COVID crisis, a lot of the, the political, cultural, and social division that we're told is so prevalent in America. And yet you look back at an event like that and you realize we're not as divided as the media makes it out to be. Well, we come together and we really can exhibit grace and compassion for each other. I like your choice of words right there, because I think that's a good takeaway in this modern age. If there's anything, one, we need to remember 9/11 because of the lives lost and the men and women, in the different services and things like that were rushing in while everybody else was trying to get out. But also just the fact that average, everyday, regular citizens displayed a grace and compassion for each other that really America needs again. We hate to be preachy here, but I think we all would agree. And Kevin and I both, we have to let the cat out of the bag, we're both Christ followers. So the fact that we believe in a God of grace and compassion leads us to want to, share grace and compassion with other people, like's been shown to us. And an event like 9/11 or a current crisis like we're in is another opportunity for us to practice the spirit of 9/11. And I believe the spirit of 9/11 is not only patriotism and love of country, but also is the fact that Americans really can and have the ability to share grace and compassion for each other. I think those are my two takeaways from what you said, those two words right there. So good stuff. Man, it's good to see you. Good to share. Glad to have you share your story with us here on Road Dirt. And from all of us with Road Dirt, want to thank again our friends at Phoenix Roasters for letting us set up right here and drink some of their good stuff and give a little shameless plug for them. And from Kevin and I to all of you, we wish you a memorable 9/11 as you take time just to remember those things and take time to display that love and compassion and grace towards each other. And until next time, this is Rob and Kevin with Road Dirt. Ride life.